You are alone in a room. No windows, no sounds, nothing moving, and yet somewhere at the back of your skull, something insists that you are not alone. You glance over your shoulder. Nothing there. You already knew that, but you looked anyway. That feeling, that crawling, irrational certainty that something is watching you, is one of the most universal experiences a human being can have. It crosses every culture, every continent, every century, and it has a name, a mechanism, and a reason buried so deep in your evolutionary past that understanding it changes the way you see yourself. This is not about ghosts. This is about your brain. And your brain, it turns out, is doing something far stranger than you ever realized. The feeling has a technical name: hyperactive agency detection. Researchers who study cognition and evolutionary psychology use this term to describe something your brain does automatically, unconsciously, and constantly. It scans the environment for signs of other minds, not just human minds, any minds, anything that might be watching, tracking, or intending something toward you. The psychologist Justin Barrett at the University of Oxford spent years studying this mechanism and called the brain's tendency to perceive minds and intentions everywhere a hyperactive agency detection device, or HADD. The idea is simple and unsettling at the same time. Your brain did not evolve to be accurate, it evolved to be fast. And when it comes to detecting watchers, it evolved to be wrong in a very specific direction. Think about what that means. Your brain would rather assume a watcher exists when none does than miss a real watcher even once. The cost of a false positive, spinning around to find an empty room, is embarrassment, a moment of wasted adrenaline, nothing more. But the cost of a false negative, failing to detect the predator actually crouching behind you, was death. Your ancestor who felt watched and was wrong survived long enough to feel foolish. Your ancestor who did not feel watched when something real was there did not survive at all. You are descended exclusively from the ones who looked over their shoulder. Go back far enough, and the world your ancestors moved through was genuinely, constantly dangerous in ways that are almost impossible to imagine from where you sit right now. Leopards hunted at dusk. Rival groups moved silently through tall grass. Snakes waited in rock crevices. The darkness between trees was not just an absence of light. It was a space where something could be hiding that wanted to eat you. For millions of years, every human brain that made it to the next generation was a brain that was good at one thing above everything else: noticing when something was paying attention to it. The primatologist Robin Dunbar at the University of Oxford has argued that a massive part of the brain's social machinery, the parts that track relationships, predict behavior, model intentions, evolved precisely because living in a group required constant, exhausting awareness of who was watching whom and why. You did not just need to know whether a predator was nearby. You needed to know whether the dominant male in your group was watching you eat his food, whether the stranger approaching your campfire had good intentions or bad ones, whether the eyes across the fire were friendly. The brain became a watcher detection machine, and that machine does not turn off. Here is the part that most people never think about. Your brain does not only scan for eyes, it scans for anything that could indicate a watching presence: a sound that stops suddenly, a shadow that moves wrong, a reflection that lasts a fraction of a second too long, the sensation of heat behind you, even the complete absence of the normal sounds of insects or birds, a silence that in your ancestral environment meant something large had caused everything else to go quiet. The neuroscientist David Eagleman has written extensively about how much of the brain's processing happens below the level of conscious thought. The signal that makes you feel watched often arrives in your awareness after the lower brain has already made its calculation. You feel it before you can explain it. That eerie certainty precedes the rational thought, because the rational thought is not what generated it. Your brain has already decided. Your consciousness is just catching up. There is a region of the brain called the posterior superior temporal sulcus, a dense strip of neural tissue that activates specifically when you perceive another being's gaze directed at you. Studies using brain imaging have shown that this region fires not only when someone is genuinely looking at you, but when you simply believe someone might be looking at you. The belief alone is enough to trigger the same neural cascade as the real thing. Your brain, in other words, cannot reliably tell the difference between being watched and feeling watched. Researchers at the University of Melbourne, led by Colin Clifford, ran a series of experiments showing that humans consistently overestimate how often others are looking directly at them. When someone's gaze is even slightly ambiguous, pointed near you but not directly at you, your brain defaults to assuming it is aimed at you. This is not vanity, this is survival code. The creature that always assumed the predator was looking at it specifically was the one that survived. Now set that watcher detection system loose in a quiet apartment at 2 in the morning with no predators, no rivals, no dangers of any kind, and it still runs. It has to. There is no switch. The brain cannot simply decide that the modern world is safe and retire the ancient system. The architecture is too old, too deep, too woven into every layer of how the nervous system processes the environment. So you feel watched in empty rooms because you were built to feel watched in empty rooms. But there is another layer to this that most explanations miss entirely. The anthropologist Pascal Boyer at Washington University in St. Louis has studied how humans across all known cultures develop a specific cognitive reflex, the assumption that unseen agents are present and intentional. Boyer argues this is not superstition, it is a default setting. In the absence of evidence that something is not there, the brain fills the gap with presence rather than absence. An empty space is not experienced as neutral, it is experienced as potentially occupied. This is the reason that darkness has frightened humans in every culture since the beginning of recorded history. Not because darkness itself is dangerous, but because darkness is a space where the watcher detection system cannot get confirmation either way. And when your brain cannot confirm that nothing is watching, it does not conclude that nothing is watching. It concludes that something might be. And it keeps that possibility open, running quietly in the background, generating that low hum of unease that you feel even when every rational part of you knows the room is empty. The feeling is doing its job. It was never meant to go away. There is something almost tender about this when you think about it the right way. Every time you feel that chill at the back of your neck, every time you glance at a dark corner for no reason you can name, every time you feel certain that something just moved at the edge of your vision, your body is doing what it was built across millions of years to do. It is protecting you. It is running a program so old that fire was a new technology when it first took its current shape. The feeling that something is watching you is not a glitch. It is the oldest software your brain is still running, and it runs constantly, faithfully, with no idea that the world it evolved to protect you from is mostly gone. Tonight, when you are alone in a quiet room, you might feel it again. That prickling certainty, that irrational urge to check the corner of the room. And now you will know exactly what it is. Not a ghost, not a malfunction, not weakness. It is a message from every ancestor who survived long enough to feel afraid, sent forward through millions of years, arriving in your nervous system right now, in a world they could never have imagined. You are alone in a room. Nothing is watching you. And the part of your brain that kept your species alive is not convinced. It was never meant to be.